Hello and welcome to the Reviews Brothers, where I have been going through the entire Sega Mega Drive or Genesis game library and picking out 10 games for each letter that don't get talked about all that often. Up until now, I've done pretty well, and there's been a surprising amount of fun games for me to check out. That is, until I got to the letters N and O, which, to be blunt, had a lot of crap. Firstly, there weren't a huge amount of games starting with those letters in the first place, and the ones that were there weren't very good. Not to mention that most of the games for N were either NBA, NHL, NFL, yawnfests. So I decided to cheat a little bit here, and I've put the two letters together in one video, and I've chosen 5 games for each letter, which was still a harder task than it should have been. So don't expect much here, but it's better than including a lot of the crap that I could have done. Anyway, I've committed, so I'll carry on. As always, how about I shut up, you press that subscribe button, and we take a look at some games. First for the letter N is NBA Hang Time. This is an arcade-style 2-on-2 game of basketball that features fast gameplay with simple controls and some crazy slam dunks. All of this might sound familiar, and you'd be right. This is basically an NBA Jam game, but due to a change in licenses they couldn't use the NBA Jam name. Essentially this is NBA Jam 3, or whatever number they were on by then. So you choose from a decent amount of teams, which I'm sure if you know anything about basketball is all very exciting. Then you've got the usual stats in terms of speed, power, shooting, defending, stealing and so on. Then you've got to head to the court for some 2-on-2 action. Obviously your goal here is to score more points than the other team, though you don't get any game modes other than single game matches here, which is a bit odd. You'd expect some tournament or something, but to be honest it doesn't really matter. Now you actually only control one of the players here, the CPU controls the other one, which always takes a minute to get used to, but it works thanks to the fact that by pressing pass or shoot when the computer player does have the ball makes them do just that. Really, you just have no control over where they actually go. The controls here are simple. You've got a pass button, a shoot button and a sprint button. Passing is easy, you just tap the button and it goes straight to the other player, though it can be intercepted. Shooting is a little trickier. If you're running towards the opponent's net and you're close enough, you'll automatically do a slam dunk, and there's loads of crazy ones that you see you jumping a mile in the air or do a flip and that sort of thing. It's really cool, but you only get 2 points. If you want to make a 3-pointer, you'll need a bit more skill and timing. You hold the shoot button to jump in the air and release it to let go of the ball. Depending on how far away you are and where you're standing, you'll need to do this and time it just right to get the points. But the game doesn't tell you that, so you've got to learn when and where to do it. It's actually kind of fun to learn, and it's really satisfying to do, and I'd probably try it too much. Now, with these games, if you score 3 baskets in a row with the same player without your opponent scoring, they go on fire, and basically can do a crazy shot. The thing is, I always find this basically impossible because getting the ball off the other team is really hard. You can tackle, but it's very tough to get right, and usually I don't really bother. Now, this is a problem I've had with every NBA Jam game, not just this one. To me, when playing the computer, it always seems to be much more of a case of you score, they score, you score, they score, and so on. If you or the computer does manage to get 2 or 3 baskets ahead, it's almost impossible to recover, unless I'm doing something drastically wrong. Don't get me wrong though, this game is still fun to play, and I don't care about basketball. It all looks decent enough, the players are large and have some great animation and some funny, almost digitized faces. There's only 1 court to play on though. But still, this is a really fun game that might get ignored as it sounds like an NBA Jam ripoff rather than the spiritual successor that it is, so you might want to give it a go if you like those kind of games. Here is the New Zealand Story, a cute platform game that explains how New Zealand was created. As we all know, before Jesus came and ruined everything, Kiwis ruled the earth, and they were perfectly happy until an evil walrus appeared and kidnapped them all in a giant sack and threw them in a zoo. You play as a Kiwi who managed to get out of the sack, and your job is to explore the dozens of levels, each of which has a Kiwi in a cave for you to rescue. And when I say cave, I mean cage. I typed that wrong. Now, this game is one I've been playing for over 30 years. I actually first had it on the Commodore 64, and even back then I had the same opinion of it that I do now, which is, why the hell is this game so weird, also why the hell is this game so hard, and also why the hell do I always come back and play this game? I still really like it. Each level is essentially a large maze. You can run and jump, and by hammering the jump button while you're in the air you do a flutter kick thingy that makes you descend slower. For some reason there's spikes all over the place in this zoo. They're all over the floors, walls and just floating in the air. Touching any of them will kill you instantly, same as if you touch an enemy. And there are loads of enemies in this game, and they come in a few flavours. There's crocodile things, bear looking things, hippo things, bats, demons and more, and most of them are floating around on balloons, which is one of the game's main mechanics. You've got a bow and arrow for some reason and unlimited ammo. You need to shoot the enemies or their balloons to kill them, but you can get on their balloons and by holding the jump button you'll be able to fly around on them. But you want to be careful with which balloons you get, as they all have various properties. Some you can ride on top of, some that you hold onto from the underside, and some that you ride inside. This can make an actual difference when getting around the stages, as you might want to be on top or underneath of certain things to avoid spikes and passageways which are very narrow and leave very little room for error. Also, some balloons are faster than others, and some are heavier so will fall down faster, and some are even immune to being popped. So there'll be lots of trial and error at the start of the game while you get used to it all, and you'll soon find your favourite balloon. The levels can be very hard to explore, but do have handy arrows dotted around them that let you know roughly where you need to go. Sometimes you'll even find things like water to swim in. These are usually mini maze sections within the maze, and you'll drown if you don't take the right path. You can find power-ups, there's letters that spell out bonus to get an extra life, and there's even a few new weapons like a laser gun that fires through multiple enemies and a flame shot that bounces around. These are actually really useful, but you will lose them when you die. You even have boss fights here, and they're crazy. The first one, which I think is the only one I've ever actually gotten to, is a flying whale frozen in ice that eats you halfway through the battle. No idea what the developers were smoking when they made this game. It looks cute though, it's bright and colourful, though nothing special. But don't let the cute characters and music fool you here, it's genuinely one of the hardest games I've ever played. So if you think you're hard enough, give it a try. I have been for years and still haven't beaten it, even with save states. Alright, one more sports game. This is NHL 98. It's a hockey game, but this is a very late one for the console, and you can really tell they knew how to do the most important thing, which is make it fun. You've got loads of game modes here. There's single games, championships, leagues, playoffs, penalty shootouts, but most of them are of course just you playing hockey, which is what you'd expect from a hockey game, I suppose. You have what I presume are all the real teams and the players from the time. It won't shock you to learn that I have no idea about hockey, so couldn't tell you, and I really don't care either way. And then you hit the ice, which is the name of another hockey game on the Mega Drive, and then you play some Puckman. Now, I don't know the rules for hockey other than you have to score goals, but that didn't stop me from actually having a lot of fun with this game and even winning almost every game I played. I'm such a pro gamer. The controls are simple. You've got pass, shoot and boost button, and if you don't have the puck, you can dash and tackle, but there are fouls, unless you've turned them off, of course. I'd often forget this and just get sent to the sin bin for a few minutes. Passing works well and is accurate, and shooting is the same. You hold the button longer for a more powerful shot, and while it's charging you want to aim with the D-pad where you want the puck to go. It is tough to score though, as the goals are small, but it's definitely doable. What you really want to do are what I believe are referred to as one-timers, where you pass the puck across the goal past the keeper and then smash it in with another player. These shots work well, though they can be tricky if the opponent has half-decent defence. In fact, you know what really surprised me was how well the game works and controls overall. It only took a few minutes to get used to it all, and it felt natural and fun to play. It was easy to tackle and challenge, and the only thing that it could have done with was maybe a small indicator of some sort to tell me where my other players were, as they were often off screen and I had no idea where I needed to pass. But other than that, I found myself playing this game for over an hour just to record this footage. As I mentioned before, not knowing the rules was sometimes annoying, as I'd do some awesome passing and moving around, and then the whistle would blow and I'd get told off for icing. What the hell is icing? Seems like a stupid rule. Now, apparently you can have fights in this game, but I played more than 10 matches and didn't have a single one, which was a shame, but I never really noticed actually as I was playing and having enough fun without fighting. The game looks good, though it is a bit choppy, not really enough to dampen the experience though, and overall, if you have any interest in hockey, I'd definitely say to give this one a go. Let's get in a car now for Nigel Mansell's World Championship. Nigel Mansell was one of the biggest names in Formula 1 in the 90s, so it's no surprise that he got his name on a few games. What is surprising though is that this game here is actually pretty damn good. It's a Formula 1 game, and your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to win. This is a single player only racing game where you can choose to play a single race from any of the tracks or do a championship. There's even a practice mode, which is nice, and there's even a section where Nigel Mansell himself gives you advice on how to race on each of the tracks and how to make sure your car is fitted with the best gear. So you take part in races all over the world, and before you race they've got the option to change your tyres, the flappy thing on the back of your car, your transmission from auto to manual, and your gear ratio to say how quickly you change your gears. Now at first I ignored these things and just used the default settings for every race, and while I did okay in some races, in others I really struggled, and then when I started playing around with these settings, you actually really notice that it makes a real difference. Having the right tyres for the weather conditions is essential for grip and handling, so you don't slide off the track. Having longer gear ratios makes a difference depending on the layout of the track. If you've got lots of straights, you want a long transmission so you build up more speed, whereas if there's more twists and turns, you want short transmissions and that sort of thing. It was really fun to play around with, and I actually tried the same track a few times with different setups to see the difference, and I did manage to get nearly 15 seconds in time difference between some of them. I couldn't believe how much I got into it. Now, it's not an intricate simulator or anything like that, but the options are great for someone like me who wants more than just an arcade racer, but with some actual tactics before the race. The tracks themselves are nice and varied, you get some colour and background changes to represent the various countries, and there's even weather effects like rain and fog, which is nice. You get a handy map in the top corner that helps with upcoming bends, and the game also gives you some really good warnings with road signs about the bends. Learning the tracks and racing on them is easy and kind of addictive. You'll be racing computer opponents most of the time, and they are a fair challenge. They don't really make mistakes, but even if you make a few, you can usually still claw back a few positions. Something that is a bit annoying though, which is common for games like this I think, is that the tracks are pretty damn narrow and it can just be hard to get past the other racers. They'll sometimes just sit in the middle of the track, sometimes two at a time, and it's literally not wide enough for you to get past them without crashing into the side barrier or obstacles. You normally have to wait for a turn somewhere. It's most annoying at the start of the race when everyone's all bunched up, but you do have the option before a race to do a qualifying lap. Doing this means you won't always be right at the back. The graphics here are good but not mind-blowing, and more importantly it runs really smoothly and has a great sense of speed, and the controls are even quite responsive, and that's all I really care about in racing games. Overall, I think this is an excellent racing game and absolutely one I would go back to and play again. I do wish it had a multiplayer mode though. And the last one we have for the letter N is an odd one. This is Normy's Beachbabe-O-Rama. One day, Normy, who is presumably the local creep, is out watching the sexy women at the beach play volleyball, when they're suddenly abducted by aliens. Then a bird swoops in and gives you some paper to say that you have to rescue them, so you pour some suntan lotion on your head and then you drink some of it, and then you go back in time to caveman days. I think whatever these guys were smoking when they made this game was even stronger than the stuff the New Zealand story team was smoking. So the game is a 2D platform game where your goal is basically to get to the end of the stage, no surprise. But thankfully it's not one of those games where you have to collect a certain number of things before you're allowed to do that. However, there might be small puzzles for you to solve to get past some areas. Normy can walk, jump and do a super dash. You can use this super dash to run into enemies and damage them, or to do massive jumps across large gaps, though you do want to use it sparingly as it's easy to run into spikes or other hazards or just end up down a hole where you'll lose a life. You've got a few worlds to get through here, and they each have their own enemies. You've got a prehistoric world, medieval England, ancient Greece and so on. I didn't finish the game, but I presume you end up in the future on an alien planet. That's usually what happens in these games. There's enemies everywhere, and they're based on the level that you're in, so I fought dinosaurs, cavemen, knights, jesters, Mayans, rats and more. And when you start levels, you actually have no way to attack. You've got to find a weapon in the level. There's two types basically, a melee attack, which is a mallet thing, and a projectile weapon. And these all look slightly different depending on the level you're on, but they all function identically. They all work fine, though this is one of those games where the hit detection is pretty crappy, so there's definitely times where you'll take damage by accident, which is always annoying. It can also be one of those games where you go, where the hell am I meant to go? The levels aren't massive, but there's times where you get to a path that's blocked and you've got to backtrack to find an item or character that can open it for you. Also, the exit isn't always in the far right, it could be anywhere, so exploring is important. Eventually you'll get to a boss, and these fights are a bit awkward thanks to crappy hit detection, and they basically boil down to making sure you can hammer the attack button faster than they can attack you. But make it through and you'll rescue the sexy babe of that world. Getting around the levels can feel awkward, the controls here work, but nothing feels quite right. The animation is choppy and slow, and collision detection is wonky. If you stand too close to a wall when you're jumping, you get stuck on the wall every time, and the whole thing just feels a bit strange. So why is it here? Well, honestly, I do actually kind of like this game. I know it's not very good mechanically, but it just reminds me of the 90s where there was loads of characters and cartoons like this, and the fact that it's just some dumb premise and a really dumb game really appeals to me. And while I know it's not a particularly good game, I really don't think it's terrible. I've certainly played worse. I just wish there was a Normy and Green Dog crossover game. That would have been awesome. Over to the letter O now, and here is the Ooze. You play as the unfortunate Dr. Kane, who thought something wasn't quite right with his workplace, the corporation. Yes, it's called the corporation. Turns out you were right, and your workplace is evil and planning on releasing a plague on the unsuspecting public. You're discovered trying to stop this and thrown into chemical waste where you're meant to die. But instead you turn into a sentient mass of disgusting goo and go on a revenge mission to take down the corporation, stopping them from releasing the plague, and maybe seeing if you can get your body back at the same time. It's a pretty cool story if you ask me. It's a top-down action game where you, as the Ooze, have to scrundle your way around some pretty large levels that are filled with all sorts of hazards and enemies that are out to stop you stopping them. You get a handful of levels and they can take a while to learn. You'll need to explore, fight enemies and destroy barrels of waste, as well as finding switches that open up new areas of the levels for you to explore until you find the exit, which is your main objective. Being a pile of goo, you've got a few abilities, mainly to just sort of slosh around, but what's cool is that as you play you grow and shrink depending on how well you're doing. As you kill enemies, find items and destroy things, you'll find more goo, or turn organic matter into goo, which then adds to your mass, making you bigger. This is handy as your weak spot is your head, so if that gets attacked you'll lose a life. Taking damage will make you smaller, but also you've got to watch out as to what is attacking you, as enemies might have weapons that can cut straight through your goo, taking massive chunks off of you, or even getting straight to your vulnerable face. You can attack though. You've got a spit move that's slow and weak but handy for things far away. But your main attack is basically sending out your goo tendrils to hurt enemies or destroy objects. The range of this depends on how big you are. The bigger, the better. It can be controlled while you're using it as well. This is good and makes it easy to attack enemies from a safe distance. But that doesn't mean it's an easy game though. Far from it, it's bloody tough. There's plenty of other hazards in the levels that are often even more dangerous than the enemies. There's flame pits, water pools, and these really mess you up if you get in them, electricity, explosions, and so on. All of these can be really hard to spot and will kill you almost instantly if you're not careful. As I mentioned before, the levels are large, and honestly this is where I had most of my trouble. There's no map or indicator of where you need to go, so you can often just slime around, wandering aimlessly looking for a switch that you missed. This can be a pain in the arse, and you do move pretty slowly. Also, something that really bugged me is that when you die, you've got to sit through a really long animation of the game telling you died, what level you're on, and so on. I'm guessing they were pretty proud of the animation, but it just takes forever to get back to actually playing, and it made me nearly stop playing a few times. It all looks good though, and I really like the artwork here and the way that Ooze moves around. And the music is excellent as well. This was made by the same team that did Comic Zone, and you can really tell as there's a bunch of the same sound effects and the music has the same ring to it, though not quite as good as the Comic Zone soundtrack. It's still a very fun game though, it's bloody tough, so be prepared to practice a lot, but I'd say it's well worth a go. Next up is an unlicensed homebrew game, which I know may be cheating, but hey, who cares. This is Oh Mummy, an update of a really old game which is actually one of the first video games I ever played, which was on an Einstein computer. Bet none of you have ever played one of those. I played this along with Chucky Egg and some skating game that I can't find for the life of me. Anyway, Oh Mummy is a simple arcade style game set in some Egyptian tombs, and here you have the option to play in the classic graphics or an updated Genesis version. Gameplay wise they're basically the same. You're an explorer and you've gone into a crypt filled with coffins. You've got to open the coffins, and of course to do that you have to walk around them. Wherever you walk, you leave footprints. So just completely surround a coffin with footprints and it will open. Once you've opened them all, you make your way to the exit and go to the next level. Now, nothing really changes here, it just gets harder, and as you may have noticed, there's evil mummies chasing you around the crypt, and if they touch you, you die, so just don't touch them. This starts off easy as there's only 1 or 2, but soon there's 5 or more, and some coffins contain more mummies that are a different colour. These ones actively chase you and follow you wherever you go, making things really tricky. If you play Genesis mode, you get some much nicer, more colourful graphics, but the gameplay is essentially the same. However, there's some really nice things that they've done to make it more interesting. For example, some stages are flooded, which means that you can't see your footprints, so you're never sure where you have and haven't been. There's levels where sand is moving in various directions, making you move faster or slower depending on the direction you're going. Some stages are pitch black and all you can see are the characters' eyeballs and evil red eyes for their mummies, and they even have boss fights in here. The levels will still play the same, with you just having to open the coffins, and doing so will damage the boss, but the bosses are often large flying things that block parts of the screen. These additions are great, and they really make the game more addictive, and it's more challenging and fun, at least it was for me. It was a great way to update the old stuff. And really, that's all there is to the game. It is incredibly simple, but it's fun. It also has a great soundtrack that brought back a load of memories from me when I heard the classic version, but the updated remix is great as well. Now, I'm not sure if you'll ever get a physical version of this game. They do exist, but I'm not sure how legit they are, and they're certainly not cheap. But still, most of us have other ways to play this, and I really recommend you do. It also has multiplayer mode, which I've never tried, but I'd imagine it would be good fun to play with a friend. Over to Japan now for... oh god, here we go. Osomatsu kun Hachamecha Gekijou. Got that? According to Google, it means something about a nonsense battle, and I agree with that. Not surprisingly, this game was only released in Japan and based on a manga where you're one of 6 siblings, and essentially the game is you having crazy battles with your 5 evil brothers, or something like that. I'm sure there's more to it, but I can't understand it. It's an action platform game where you explore some pretty crazy levels that take you through forests, towns, caves, psychedelic areas and all sorts more. Your goal is to find the boss at the end of the stage and beat them. You can run and jump as well as use your slingshot to attack enemies, and there's lots of enemies here, and they're all kinda strange. Most are human looking things, but they also have crazy distorted faces. You've got various bits of wildlife, but most of these have strange human faces. Enemies will usually fire projectiles at you, so try not to get too distracted by their crazy designs. Finding the bosses here can be tricky, but kind of fun. The levels are divided into a few sections and can be explored quite freely. There's doors to go through, clouds to ride into the air, and often pits that you can fall in that won't kill you. Instead, they'll take you to another part of the level. Not all of them though, so be careful. This means you'll need to find the right combination of path, hole and door to get to the end of the stage. That's when you'll fight a boss, which I think is a brother of yours in various costumes. These are often silly and played for laughs, sometimes being stereotypes that probably wouldn't fly today. Beating bosses actually increases your life bar, as well as the range of your slingshot, which is a really nice touch. It doesn't mean that things get easier though, as there's enemies all over the place, and they're often placed in areas that are hard to avoid their attacks, especially before you learn where they're going to appear from. In levels, you'll also find loads of bows. Collect these as they're your currency. There's shops in stages where you can spend your bows to get health back, as well as a few items that I don't really know what they do as it's all in moon language. They won't be too hard to figure out though. The graphics here are fine, they're bright and colourful, and I do like the designs on things, but the animation is pretty basic. The controls are good but a little floaty. The main issue is the hit detection, though it's not terrible. The music and sound is pretty grating though, especially the noise of enemies exploding. But on the whole, this game is an interesting one. I've got a soft spot for crazy Japanese humour, and this game has tons of it. It probably won't be for everyone, but there is a perfectly fine game here if you want to give something new a try. Now here's an odd one, it's the Ottifants. Now what is an Ottifant? Well, they're a bunch of gross looking German cartoon characters that are basically elephants that have had their ears cut off. They're creepy and I love them. This is their video game. You play as Bruno, and your father has gone missing, so basically you go exploring a bunch of worlds to see if you can find him. From what I can tell, you're a tiny creature, as you're exploring large worlds that are essentially kind of like houses, gardens, and things like that. Your goal on each level is to find your dad, who actually hasn't gone all that far. But to complete the level, you'll need to feed him a certain number of floaty coloured things, so if you haven't got enough when you find him, you'll have to go back through the level collecting even more. The number you need to collect all depends on the difficulty you have the game set to. I recommend just putting on easy, so you don't have to spend hours searching high and low for things. Though, in fact, this game is nowhere near as tedious as a lot of other games with this style of gameplay. In fact, almost every time I made it to the end of the level, I already had the number of things required just because they're actually placed around levels in sensible places. Anyway, as you've seen by now, this is all done in platforming style. You can wander about as well as jump and even fire coloured ball things from your face. There's enemies in the stages, and these are mostly bugs and things like that, but also some strange creatures that match the theme of the level. Shooting them does good damage, but your range is inconsistent. However, you can aim up and down a bit, which is nice. You can also jump on most enemies, which is also good, and I didn't realise it till quite late on. The levels have various puzzle elements in order for you to get around. You'll need to use your elephant trunk in various ways to explore the level. You can use it to grab blocks which you might need to then place in certain areas in order to reach places you couldn't normally jump to, and you can also throw blocks at enemies. Or something that took me forever to figure out is that you can use your trunk to suck platforms that are far away and move them around, so you can actually jump on them to reach new areas. I was stuck for ages at one point until I accidentally did it. Once I did, it made most future levels much easier. Basically, if you're ever stuck, just try sucking everything. Though outside of the game, that is not good advice. As well as the things you need to exit levels, you can find other things in stages. These are power-ups that make you invincible, jump higher, run faster, and that sort of thing. And something I really like here is there are bonus levels hidden around. There's no indication that there's one of them nearby, and you'll just randomly disappear at various points and end up in a level with loads of things to collect. But the level design here is actually pretty good, so quite often you'll naturally find the bonus levels. And as you progress, you will learn to sort of keep an eye out for suspicious looking things like a platform that seems to have no purpose. When you see stuff like that, you can almost always find an entrance to a hidden stage. Each world has 5 levels, which is quite a lot, and then at the end of them you get a boss fight, and these are actually really fun, and more importantly, they're fair. They're big monsters that will jump around the level or fly about like idiots while you either try and jump on them or shoot them with your face bullets. Some took me a while to beat, but I was always looking forward to seeing what the boss was going to be. It's not all fun and games though. The game does have some annoying things about it, mostly the instant deaths. Now you actually do have a life bar here, and you can take quite a few hits from enemies, but if anything other than an enemy touches you, it's instant death. So if you touch spikes, even the side of them, you die. If a rock falls on you, you die. That sort of thing. It tends to be things that you have no way of knowing are there the first few times you play a level, so there will be some trial and error here. And some of the puzzles do seem a bit confusing at first, like there's switches and things in stages, and these will do things like drop items or open a path, but give you no indication as to actually what they do, so you might press a button and then spend a few minutes going, what the hell did that do? But the levels are never so big that it's a huge problem. And what does help is that the graphics here are great, at least I think they are. Aside from the disgusting character designs, the stages have loads of detail and plenty of enemies and things like that, and I think the music's pretty good as well. And I think it's just a fun game. It would be one that's easy to overlook. I think it only came out in Europe, which makes sense, but it is one that I recommend trying. And finally for today, here is Out of This World. This is the sequel to Flashback, which you may remember from the letter F video. Or actually, that might be the sequel to this. If only I had some sort of online information database where I could look these things up, eh? Anyway, you play as a scientist, though I don't think he's a very good one, as he's doing an experiment and causes a massive explosion that sends him out of his world and into another one. This is a really fun, if often frustrating at first, cinematic action platform game. Your mission is just to find your way off the hostile planet that you're on, but boy, that ain't easy. This is a game I remember playing years ago, and I don't think I even managed to get past the first few screens. But now I am +3 intelligent, and I was able to do that. Plus, I watched the Game Grumps series of this game recently by pure coincidence, so had a decent idea of what to do. Doesn't mean it's easy though. It's all done in side-scrolling fashion, and you can run, jump and interact with things, and the game is deliberately set up so you have very little in the way of hints or ideas on where you need to go. There is a hell of a lot of trial and error here, but it's by design, so if that's not your thing, you probably won't like it. As you explore the planet, you'll find yourself in all sorts of dangerous situations, and each one is as much a puzzle as it is action-based. The first thing you have to do in the game is escape a tentacled beast that's underwater and trying to drag you down. Then you have to avoid some leech things that kill you instantly if you touch them. Then a black dog monster thing turns up that must have been the inspiration for the aliens in Attack the Block, which if you haven't seen that movie, I highly recommend. Now, all of this is literally the first minute of the game, but honestly, it could take you over an hour to get past this bit while you learn what to do. You'll need to learn to time your jumps, when to crouch, when to run, when to stop, and so on. It's only when you get this down to almost perfect that you'll get past it. And that's how the game kind of carries on. It does slow down a bit, but it puts you in plenty of situations that can be beaten in a few minutes, but you'll likely spend half an hour or more figuring most screens out. You do get a gun after all of this, which is very handy, though it doesn't mean the game is an action one. You still have to learn when and where to shoot enemies. Sometimes you don't want to shoot them at all. The gun has a limited charge, but there are charging stations littered around. Also, you can do a charged shot that blows up walls, and this is very important. If you're ever stuck, just try holding down the shoot button while you're stood next to a wall or a door, and chances are you'll blow the thing up. And basically, that's the gameplay loop. You go around the planet from scenario to scenario, dying every few seconds, but making it a little further each time. I think it would be annoying if it wasn't so apparent that that's the whole point of the game, and it is quite fast paced and gets you back into the action. You do get a game over, but you get passwords quite regularly, and I bet this would be a fun game to speedrun. The graphics here are excellent. It's got that deliberate, slow animation that's incredibly detailed, and it almost looks like flat shaded polygons. You also get loads of really good cutscenes to progress the story, or usually to show the horrible ways that you die. The only thing that's a bit crap are the sound effects and some of the music. They're very low quality, but the rest of the game sure makes up for it. I think a few of you might have played this already, but if you haven't, definitely give it a go. Just go in with a lot of patience, it's all about learning. The controls might seem sluggish at first, but it's a deliberate thing and they're actually perfect for this game. Save states are really the way to go, but you do get regular passwords, so you never have to start too far from where you left off. But yeah, give it a go. So there you go, another 10 games for the Sega Mega Drive or Genesis that you might have missed. As always, let me know what other games I could have included. These letters had a lot of crap, so it's possible I did overlook some in my rush to find some. On screen now you can see where you can follow me, so why not do so? I got loads of great content for everyone to enjoy. And now all that's left for me to say is thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time.